child everywhere.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Grit and Grace, a literacy journey. For today's episode, I am just like a kid on Christmas. I am so excited because today we're welcoming back one of our favorite guests, Dr. Jan Hasbrouck. And I know that she's one of your favorite guests, but I just have to say, this is like a fangirl moment for me. She's one of my favorite people in education. So right now I'm feeling like the little girl who writes songs in her bedroom and then gets to go to the Taylor Swift concert. That is where I'm at today. So, on a more serious note, Jan has been a mentor, a friend, and an incredible advocate for children, teachers, and families. Today, we're going to talk about her book, Conquering Dyslexia, and whether you are a classroom teacher, school leader, interventionist, or parent, we think this conversation is going to bring both clarity and hope. So, Miss Jan, welcome back to Grit and Grace.
Thank you very much, Gretchen. It's a delight to be here with both of you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that you said, Gretchen, she's one of your favorites. You know, from your childhood, she is my favorite. So, Jan, I wanted to let you know, Gretchen mentioned that you are our listeners, one of our listeners' favorite as well. We have just gone past having the podcast for 1 year. Very excited. So we did a lot of data, dig and look back on everything. You are the most listened to podcast, the one on fluency. And we had the biggest response from our listeners, got a lot of questions after that one. And when I surveyed teachers and listeners on who would they most definitely want to hear from again in year 2, you were at the top of that list. So thank you so much for coming back and being with us today. I'm so excited.
My honor and pleasure. I just, that's lovely to hear. I have been around now for a very long time and doing a lot of people have heard me, and I just keep waiting for the point where okay, we're done now. We don't need to hear this.
Not going to happen. No, I sat on like row 4 of that packed room at the Reading League's conference last year in that enormous room, and it was packed and they were hanging on your every word. So I think you're going to be busy for quite some time. All right, Gretchen,
well, that's good for me. That's fine with me.
So, just a quick reminder today we're going to be talking a lot about dyslexia. And dyslexia is a topic that Mom and I are very, very passionate about. I know that I personally started working with students with dyslexia when I was 15 years old. So, often when parents would see their student struggling and we would have an idea of, okay, this is what's going on, I would start providing intervention after school until they could get placed in intervention within the school that they were going to. And then if you have followed our story and if you've listened closely, you'll know that it was when Mom she met a dyslexic child who she just did not know what to do. Everything that she had done previously was not working. And so it was that student that really led her down the path that has gotten us to where we are today. So not only are we excited to talk about dyslexia and to help you all become more knowledgeable, but this is just also a subject matter that's very close to our hearts. Okay. Jan, you've spent your entire career helping educators understand reading and support struggling readers. After all these years, what made you say, now is the time to write Conquering Dyslexia?
Well, interesting things happen along the way, doesn't it, for all of our careers? Things that we have clarity about, choices and goals, and we pursue them, and sometimes that works out. And then other times it's a colleague or a happenstance that changes a direction for you. And in this case, it actually was the publisher that I was working with who suggested it. It wasn't on my radar specifically. But they saw the need. They knew my story, and that was part of it. They knew certainly that in my background in reading and reading research, and I had written a book on reading fluency for this publisher, but Benchmark Education, it was the publisher. And we were talking about my reading fluency book and what other books I might want to write. And it was one of them who said, you're a parent of a child with dyslexia, and she had heard me talking about that whole process and journey of that aspect of my life.
Mhm.
And she said, why don't you write a book and think about writing it for parents, making it not, another a textbook on dyslexia. And I was really grateful for that because I have a whole shelf back there of books on dyslexia that are excellent. And that's I didn't want to rewrite another one. I was just like, go buy that one or that one or that one. So that idea of writing a book that would capture both the many decades of work I've done in this field of working with children who struggle with reading, including children with dyslexia, and marrying that with my personal journey of being a parent of a child with dyslexia was really intriguing. And starting off with the idea that it would be um, evidence-based. I mean, it had to be evidence-based. What do we really know? But make it digestible and understandable by parents. And then, of course, parents weren't going to be the only audience. Once I started writing, I realized that there are many, many teachers, or Gretchen, like you, perhaps a teenager who's working with a student with dyslexia who may be volunteering in a school setting or have a sibling with dyslexia, or a grandparent, or maybe who's someone who just got elected to a school board and they're hearing about this thing called dyslexia. They don't want to read one of those research-based textbooks. They just want to dig in. What is it? What do we do about it? So it was really a suggestion that was made to me, and I'm very grateful that that suggestion was made because I really definitely enjoyed the process. Paragraph by paragraph, it took me back to those early years of my daughter. That every parent, I can promise you, every parent who has a child with dyslexia will tell you the same story. My
Yes.
lovely, bright, engaging,
Yeah.
creative, wonderful child. Life was great until they went to school, until academics started. And that's where things fell apart. And the mystery of why. Why is this happy, smart, verbal, lovely child suddenly everything is flipped? And that is the story you hear over and over and over and over again from parents. So sharing that story from me, and it wasn't the fact that I had training. A master's degree, several years of work. A lot of people do assume that, oh, is that why you got into this field because of your daughter? No, no, no. I was in this field long before, and it didn't help a whole lot for me to figure out what was going on because she's my daughter, and the mystery of, I mean, it didn't. And also in those days, this was, she's what is she now? She's 46 now. We weren't really talking a lot about dyslexia back then. It wasn't a term widely used even in the profession as much as it is now. So yeah, that's how that book came about. It was a suggestion, but it gave me that opportunity to talk about my personal story as well as the wonderful training and amazing career I've had in this field.
Yes, I
And
love
it is
that.
always the book that I recommend to parents in particular,
Mm,
to teachers as well, but for sure
yeah,
parents. And
yeah.
I often give it as a gift to parents
Mm,
because I honestly, when I read that book the first time, and I've reread it, and especially parts of it multiple times, but your voice comes through it.
yeah,
It really is a book like you're just having a conversation with someone. Like when you reference the books on your shelf, it's not one of those. It
right.
isn't this. No, it's you can pick it up. It's easy to read. It's very, but you just leave with an understanding of what dyslexia
Mm,
is and what it is not, and what you can do to help, what does help. But also, I think hope really comes through the book. And I know
yeah.
we'll talk more about that in the episode,
Yes.
but
Hmm.
excellent job on it. So,
Well, and I
Thank you.
love that you spent so much time and thought dedicated to the parents. Because,
Yes.
like you said, when you hear these stories of children with dyslexia, almost every story is the same.
Yeah.
And in the heart of those stories are parents who just felt lost and didn't
Hmm.
know where to turn. And the emotional heartbreak and the emotional trauma that these circumstances bring to families
Yeah.
is unreal. So I love that you now have given a resource where they can realize I'm not alone and there
Yes.
is hope. And also giving them a sense of community, because that's
Hmm.
really what we need is, listen, I have been through this as well. There is
Hmm.
light at the end of the tunnel. And once one family has fought this battle, we can help others to hopefully where we're no longer having to say it is a battle.
Right. Very true. Very true. And there are now community. There are dyslexia resources, and with the internet, you can instantly
Yes.
get connected with people.
Mhm.
But organizations specifically for support of families, and that's a wonderful thing to connect people with. So thank you
Yeah.
for those kind words.
We'll share some of those in our show notes as well. Yeah.
Very
Yes.
good.
So, dyslexia is often misunderstood. And I feel that really here in the last 5 to 10 years, dyslexia has become a buzzword, which has led
Yes.
to more misunderstanding. So, how
Yes.
do you define dyslexia? And what are some of the biggest misconceptions you still encounter today?
Well, the way I define dyslexia is really aligned with the International Dyslexia Association. And they just last year, in the fall of, yeah, this is 20, fall of their IDA, the IDA conference in the fall of 2025, they revealed their new definition of dyslexia. And it's a quite a big change from the one that has been in place for close to 20 years. And that original definition was created like the new one with many researchers and scientists who work in this field, plus people from the field and parents and people weighed in and crafted a very good definition that was in place for a very long time. But research continues to happen and those kinds of things. So in the background, there have been teams of people working on the new definition, and they revealed it last fall. And it remains. I'm looking over it at my screen because it's really long. That was one of the things we saw. I was sitting there in the audience when they revealed this at the IDA conference, like, oh, it's almost twice as long as the previous one was. So that has its challenges, because it's meaty and there's a lot of sentences and there's a lot of words in there. But they continue, this new definition continues to say that they agree dyslexia is a specific learning disability, which, this is the International Dyslexia Association, not just for the US. In the US, we have that term, specific learning disability, has some laws all around it and everything. It means something. But in the general world, there's an understanding that that is a group of children, learners with some specific challenges that need to be identified and addressed. So they do call it a specific learning disability. They still say, because this is the essence of what dyslexia, dys for lexia, reading, is that it's characterized by difficulties with word reading and or spelling that involve accuracy, speed, or both, depending on orthography. So this is one of the ways that the International Dyslexia Association really acknowledge that dyslexia manifests differently in different languages. So that's the orthography. We've got very opaque orthographies like English that are highly irregular and very weird. I was talking to my almost 14-year-old grandson the other day about English. He's eager to learn other languages, but we talked about how blessed we are to be native English speakers because it's just so hard. But it's opaque, it's highly irregular. So in English speaking countries and many other languages, it's the accuracy of reading that we see dyslexics have difficulty with. In other languages that are transparent, very regular, that every letter stands for only one sound. Can you believe it? Because that's relatively simple. Children who have solid language, even if they have dyslexia, can learn to read and spell those words quite accurately. But if they have dyslexia, it's going to manifest a little bit later when the text gets more complex and they're expected to read at the rate of speaking. They don't make that shift. So that the definition goes on to acknowledge that this is a continuum. It occurs on a spectrum. Lucky dyslexics like my daughter with mild, moderate-ish dyslexia to the extremely severe, where learning to read, write, and spell is may never manifest with a whole lot of strengths. It acknowledges that it has nothing to do with intelligence. There was an implication for a while, and this is actually perhaps one of the myths that we can talk about, that that dyslexics have some special abilities, that it's really, really bright people that get dyslexia or have dyslexia. It has nothing to do with intelligence one way or the other. It certainly doesn't mean it absolutely has nothing, implying that if you have dyslexia, you have low IQ or low intellectual ability, but you could. And people with moderate intellectual abilities, capacities, capabilities can have dyslexia, and people who are, geniuses can have dyslexia. It's irrelevant, that aspect. It is a very narrowly focused concern around lexile issues, reading, writing, spelling. The older definition also really zeroed in on what we thought we all agreed on, that let's just call dyslexia a difficulty with phonological processing. And that sort of emerged out of some theories from the early 70s and seemed to be evident, but subsequent research has shown that this that we call dyslexia can involve phonological challenges, how the brain processes the aspects of spoken language. But there are children that we clearly need to call dyslexia who don't have those phonological problems. Their problems are simply orthography. They cannot translate the sounds of language back into print in a consistent way. So it can be combinations of those things. The new definition says what dyslexia is a combination of genetic, neurobiological, and environmental issues that interact throughout development. And then it goes on, as the previous definition did, to talk about secondary consequences that we've already touched on to a certain degree. If you have dyslexia, if learning to read, write, and spell are difficult for you, a lot of the world is going to be difficult for you. And therefore, there's those emotional, psychological impacts. It can affect your ability to then go on and get a job and have a career and be successful in the world. It also does say that the previous definition didn't really get around to saying this, but this is very important. Early identification and intervention can make a big difference. And that is probably the main message that I hear from the researchers who are dedicating their life to dyslexia, is that drumbeat of statement. Intervention, instruction, powerful, targeted instruction is going to make the difference. And the earlier we start, the better.
It's a point that I feel is so clear in your book, Conquering Dyslexia, that you bring that out. And it's so clear that the sooner. Don't wait for them, or don't
Yeah.
think, oh, they can catch up.
Yeah.
No, we need to intervene immediately. So let's then talk about the teacher aspect of it. If you were then speaking directly to classroom teachers, what are, if they do need to intervene early, what are the first signs that teachers should notice that might indicate a student is struggling with dyslexia?
Well, when we think about the first signs, I can think about teachers um, who work even at the preschool level and with children with emerging language. They can perhaps, as parents can at that early stage, start looking or start noticing that some children, maybe their own child, has maybe some difficulty with recognizing rhymes. That's one of the ways that what we call the phonological issue challenges manifest, is that certain words that we call rhyming words sound alike, and most brains can recognize that. That's one of the characteristics of many children with dyslexia, is they don't hear the sounds in the same. They hear them, physically hear them, but they don't process them the same. And so all the fun little things that 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds love to do is say nursery rhymes and notice that that word sounds like that, or make up rhyming games. Children with dyslexia may not be able to do that, and may just find other things that are fun. But looking at that, uh, if we get into school, kindergarten, first grade, and throughout the other grades, those children who many of them do have strong language, although there can be co-occurring challenges with language. Developmental language disorder is frequently co-occurs with dyslexia, so we have to be sensitive to that. But a lot of our children with dyslexia have quite strong language, and despite that strong language and their curiosity and their interest, with your good instruction, they're still having difficulty connecting and remembering what was that letter and what was that sound and how do I put them together. So you're giving good instruction, and most of the children are getting that, or some of the children are just taking off with it. One of the signs that we can start to suspect dyslexia is that if you are in fact doing that good, explicit, systematic instruction, age appropriate, fun, perky pace, it's all going well for most of the kids, and yet these children, they're just not getting it. That connection between letters and sounds, blending, making words, remembering all that, difficulty with those kinds of things. And then we may go up to the upper grades and we still see some of that depending on the quality of the instruction they've had. But fluency, the ability to read text fluently, can be also a sign of the inability to do that. Those children who maybe because of really good instruction can read the words quite accurately, and if they can read them, they can figure out what they mean. Their listening comprehension is adequate or quite strong, but they can't seem to read the text fluently. That also can be a sign of dyslexia.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
So often, people are like, well, could you put this into layman's terms for me? Or, well, can you break that down for me? So, a lot of times when I hear people talk about dyslexia and those early signs, one of the phrases that comes to me, and I don't know if this is correct or not. Like I said, this is just what runs through my brain. So please tell me if this is incorrect. But one of the things that I have noticed in a lot of the students that I've worked with, especially like when you're talking about the inability to rhyme, I feel like it's almost the inability to detect a pattern.
Yeah. But it would be primarily, I think, an auditory patterns.
Right.
That
Yes.
if you were giving them, I instantly think of my daughter, who to this day is where her sort of intellectual or academic gifts always was with math. And the more esoteric, the better for her. I remember in high school, vividly her coming home one day and saying, okay, that's it. When I go to college, I'm going to major in math because I have to write a good calculus textbook. She said, the one we're
Wow.
using is just confusing everybody. She said, I'm spending my whole time in calculus going around and trying to explain to
Mhm.
my, peers what's in the book because they don't get it. And of course, she didn't learn it from the book because she could probably barely read the book, but she just got it. And her idea to sort of related, what she loves to do to relax is create quilts and then take those quilts and make coats out of them and give them away to people. And all of that just makes me shiver and sweat a little bit. All that intricacy and how they fit and yeah. So where was I going? I really got lost on
That
that one.
it's auditory
Patterns,
patterns.
Auditory.
patterns.
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, because she's super, super good at three-dimensional and patterns, and that is not to say that that is a characteristic, that strength is a characteristic. It happens to be hers. Every human being has strengths and challenges, but it's clearly not related to the problems that she had and continues to have
Right.
with written language specifically. But yeah, that does relate to patterns. I think that that would be something to take a look at. Um, the categories, it would depend. Categories of how things are, what are these things? These things are all animals, these things are all
Right.
buildings, these things are all
Mhm.
vehicles. That's a language disorder. And if kids had difficulty with that, that would be much more likely labeled as something, a possible characteristic of a developmental language disorder, which again, we're still trying to figure that out. There's a lot of co-occurrence, but
Yes.
that was not something my daughter had. She had strong language, lucky for her, and strong visual representation and mathematical representations. It was simply those pesky sounds and words that she had. Yeah, but I don't think that's a wrong interpretation,
Mhm.
but we have to be careful about
Oh,
um
absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that we love about your work is that you always give educators hope.
Mm.
What can classroom teachers do every single day that makes the biggest difference for students with dyslexia?
Get so excited. I'm sorry, I've got to get it. Okay, I'm so excited.
What are we going to
Yeah,
say?
yeah.
I think number one would be, this may surprise you, but because of the challenges that children with dyslexia face on the social emotional side of things, that
Mhm.
has to be every day that teachers do their best
Mhm.
to help that child believe the truth that they're not dumb. Um, that's that story you hear all the time from the
Yeah.
parents, is that my kid who was wonderful and great just suddenly felt, what's wrong with me? Something's wrong with me. And because this is school and it's all about learning, what's wrong with me is clearly that I'm dumb. I mean, this is where the 4-year-olds and the 5-year-olds and the 6-year-olds, and then you start saying that to yourself. And if teachers inadvertently, or I've seen some teachers who get confused and these children are mysteries to them, and they kind of think, yeah, you must be dumb. I've never heard a teacher say that directly to a child, but you can see they're implying that. So, number one is have a good enough understanding. Every teacher needs to have a solid enough understanding about what dyslexia is, that they understand that that's irrelevant to, and that it's very challenging, and these kids are going to self-talk themselves into, I can't do this because I'm dumb. So there's pointing out my daughter's first teacher angel. She used that term. I know a lot of people do,
Oh,
but she had a teacher angel in fourth grade. Miss Pat, they called their teachers Miss Pat or Mr. Peter or whoever it was, but Miss Pat um, told my daughter that she was smart. And I had been telling her she was smart, but it didn't matter. When Miss Pat told her she was smart, she heard her. So there's that relationship. You got to have a relationship. You got to respect and trust each other. But Miss Pat was teaching writing and taught my daughter, you've got fabulous stuff in your head. We're going to get it down on paper and we're going to work on the spelling and the printing and all that stuff later. But you're so smart. I want to hear all that, that smartness in you. And I want to see these stories. And we still have papers from there where she would write differently than other teachers. Wow, Lizzie, you're so smart. Oh, I love this story. You are so funny. You always make me laugh, that kind of thing. That was the first teacher that she felt or remembered validated her. We also have lots of papers where, teachers are writing, you need to try harder.
Oh,
Like, and I always think about those teachers. Why don't you come
heartbreaking.
to our house? Come to our house after school.
Yeah.
I'll feed you. I'll give you a glass of wine, whatever you want. I just want you to sit here and watch my daughter. And you tell me and you tell her how she could work harder.
Yeah.
I have PTSD about all this stuff. But let's go back to positive.
And
What can we
parents
say
do.
positive? Yes, and
And
parents
parents do.
too.
Yeah.
Yes,
And so do the students.
yeah. They
Yeah,
do
no,
have
I'm
to work
glad you said
harder.
that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
There is a
Yeah.
piece, I know there's a paragraph or a sentence or two in my book that I found and put in the book Conquering Dyslexia about some researchers, I believe at the University of Washington, who said children with dyslexia, their brains are basically working 5 times harder. I don't know where they came up with that, but these were the neuropsychologists who said that. They're working really hard. Sometimes you feel like you can see the steam come out of their ears. But the hope and the positive. So the first thing a teacher can do um, that's hopeful is understand that these kids are generally working really hard. They can learn. They need to feel that they can. That's a big part of your job. You can change a child's life by making them, as my daughter's life got changed by her teacher, by making them feel smart. And then it is taking a deep breath, rolling up your sleeves, getting as big a team together as possible, because it's going to take a lot of hard work on the part of the child and a part of the teacher. So one of the key things a big takeaway from the research over the last 50 years, but really coalescing over the last 20 years, is that we do not need to teach children with dyslexia in a different way. What we've learned in the last 50 years about effective instruction that you two know well, and you can chant it has to be systematically designed, explicitly delivered, with intensity and engagement. When we do that, we know that works for all students, and that's exactly what our children with dyslexia need. They just are going to need twice as much, 3 times as much, 5 times as much, 10 times as much. Now my hands are even going off the screen and we don't know what that's going to be at the beginning, but that's the difference. It boils down to the number of high quality repetitions, where
Yeah.
some kids, your neurotypical kids, are going to take 3 to 4 to 5 to 7 practices. Our children with dyslexia are going to take 27, 49, 327. So how do we do that? It's not going to be one teacher can't just shut down the classroom and I'm going to work with my 2 children with dyslexia. We have to figure out a way. And that's part of what the framework of MTSS, a good structure, allows us to at least think about the resources we have in the school, we can pull on using good, well-designed computer programs where a child with dyslexia can do engaging, good work to do that level of repetition, because we just have to get very resourceful. But to me, that's very hopeful. What we believed, what originally came out of the theories of the Orton Gillingham work of Sam Orton and Anna Gillingham, who put their brilliant minds together and came up with a strategy to teach dyslexic children. That whole Orton Gillingham and IDA is built on that foundation. They made some correct theories and some correct things. They basically said what these children with dyslexia need is good instruction. And the good instruction for reading, they weren't using the term systematic explicit phonics, but that's what they were doing. They systematically designed a good phonics instruction and delivered it explicitly. But they also added on some things theoretically, like these children need extra stimulation, so we should have them write in the air, or they should trace letters in sandpaper or texture, shaving cream or rice trays. That's necessary because they have dyslexia. Recent research has looked at those methods and said, yeah, they've been working better than most methods, but the reason they worked was the systematically designed explicit instruction. It wasn't the sandpaper and the air writing, and those things can be beneficial in terms of just motivation. In order to learn to write the letter M and know that it says, you're going to have to do that 227 times. Right. So maybe let's do some of it in sandpaper and some of it in shaving cream and some of it in a rice tray and some of it on a whiteboard, just for engagement. But it's that sensory stuff that we used to believe for a very long time that was necessary, that children with dyslexia learned differently and they needed that sensory input. We now know that that's not true. So another piece of hope, I think, for teachers is that they don't need to learn a whole new way of teaching children to read. We just, as a system, as Angie, you know this so well. Systems and structures, got to figure that out. And figure out the time that these children can get the amount of instruction that they're going to need.
And can I add one thing, because this is something I've been working this week with Justin Browning, and he and I were talking about, and he's been a recent guest. We get so much pushback, Jan, on, and my level of love and respect for Dr. Anita Archer. We get so much pushback on perky pace. And as Patty and I write about, and it's possible brisk pace. And he and I said back to the teachers, it's the only way to get the number of repetitions that you need. Yeah. We're not saying teach fast. That's not what it's about. So I've gotten a lot from listeners. So I just want to stress, because I've been answering dozens of questions on, do we really have to teach at a perky pace? Listeners, here's one of the reasons why. Yes, we most certainly do. It is a component of explicit instruction in that delivery piece that, yes, we do have to do that. Sorry, I didn't mean to take it somewhere
that's
else,
very good. And anytime you want to weave Anita Archer into anything I say, that's excellent. Yeah, and the perky pace, we think of that as what the teacher has to do, but the perky pace involves also the students are engaged in doing lots of responding. Yeah, both those
and eliciting those frequent, those frequent student responses that drive the pace of that lesson.
And it's not talking fast and covering the material real fast. No, it's the engagement of I'm going to keep this exciting. I'm going to keep us, and I'm going to keep you engaged and actively participating
and actively responding.
I think people are getting lost in the word brisk. They panic. So we almost need to rephrase that and say, like, work at a pace that provides room for ample repetitions. I feel like that is a lot less intimidating. Or teach at a quality pace, a pace that is high quality, that's going to lead to high quality repetitions. So I think it is that term brisk pace that really just throws people off. It's the word brisk.
Well, someone said to me yesterday, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much, but someone said yesterday in the training, I said, okay, explain that to me a bit more. I heard Anita Archer say it and was like ready to go do it. So explain to me the hesitation with the phrase perky pace. And it was about what they the words that were spoken, and this happens all the time in education, the words that were spoken were perky pace. What that teacher heard, what they were hearing was about my delivery must be like perky happy. And I'm like, no, no,
Oh,
no, no, no. So then it's really breaking that down. And we do have to be very clear as coaches and leaders what,
mhm.
because as Reed Lyon, as we talked about with Dr. Reed Lyon, often we don't have that common language,
Mhm.
but you're right. I mean, there is part of that to that, Gretchen. So
Connotation versus denotation.
there we go. So now let's shift it to parents. And Jane, you've lived with this. So
Yeah.
for the parents receiving a dyslexia diagnosis, that does feel overwhelming. So what would you want every parent to know when they hear that, when they find out that their child has dyslexia? They've known there's a struggle and they've been living with that. But when they hear that, what do you want those parents to know?
Well, the first thing is that uh, there is hope. Absolutely. It is not a diagnosis that says now there's no hope for your child. Your child can't read. Your child's going to be a failure. Your child's going to suffer their whole life. Um, and I think a lot of parents actually, I know for me, when we actually heard that, when I finally realized what was going on with my daughter, a friend of mine was the one who had a special ed background, and I was just tearing my hair out. What is going on with her? I said, yeah, this is dyslexia. When she said that, for me, I think this is also for a lot of parents. There's this, in a way, a relief. Just like, oh, okay. This isn't that she's got something, wrong with her brain, or that she's not trying hard enough. It just seems so mysterious, and that, okay, now I have a name for it. And for me, then I was blessed because I did have all my training in instruction, and I really trusted instruction, and I knew that was going to be the answer. What parents need to know is that there are vast resources to learn more. I mean, you could start first by just going to the International Dyslexia Association, and they have placed there for parent resources. So you can start an education, a journey of educating yourself about what is this thing, and what's in store for my child, and what does my child need, and how can I get that help for them, and then branch out, as we talked about earlier, to that community of people. There are thousands and thousands and thousands, millions around the world of families that deal with this challenging, this learning challenge, and there's a community of people there who will give you the hugs and the support and tell the stories and then connect you with the best resources. So and that then we have to get real about, these families are going to have different levels of resources available to them. Some families have, okay, all I have to do is, find a school, a private school for dyslexia, and okay, the tuition's $100,000 a year, and okay, we got that. It's not going to be a problem. Let's just get them into that school. Um, for many, many, many other parents, that's a dream to have an answer that easy. It is a wonderful answer. There are many fabulous dyslexia schools that are all prepared and all set up to take your child and just do amazing things with them. What we all should want is that our public schools could do the same thing for not spending $100,000 a year of the family's money. So trying to figure out what the resources are in your community. If you can afford not private school, but tutoring, that's a wonderful thing. But we want the tutors to be working aligned with the classroom teacher, because what we see a lot is parents not understanding the importance of coherent and cohesive instruction. They'll hire a tutor to do really good things, but perhaps with a curriculum that's significantly different from what they're doing in the school. And it ends up not moving the student forward, but confusing them. Now they're trying to learn two different things rather than one. So communicating to the school about what your plans are and what you're doing, and hopefully the people at the school are informed and have resources and wherewithal to talk to you, perhaps connect you with tutors that they will work with, and talking to the folks at the school. That diagnosis or label may have come from the school, but it may have come from someone outside the school. We want to be sure that your child's teacher is understanding what that diagnosis is and is herself or himself aware of dyslexia and what they should be doing for your child. So it's good. It is creating that community and continuing to communicate with everyone across the board. We want the child's pediatrician to know about this definition and get everybody pulling the wagon in the same direction is really important.
Okay, so looking ahead, what gives you the greatest hope for the future of reading instruction and support for students with dyslexia?
I would have to say it's this growing awareness of what dyslexia really is and isn't. I think that the amazing work that the people did to craft this new definition at IDA and the explanation is really helpful. And many of those people are researchers working every single day to help continue to give us as practitioners or parents answers. I have a lot of hope that we're getting better information, more information, clarity about what dyslexia is, moving away from the myths of dyslexia. I do have a lot of hope, and that's all within the larger work that's being done in schools around the science of reading, the science of learning, the science of instruction. Much more awareness I'm seeing in schools, at least conversations about that are moving. I am an optimist. I probably couldn't stay in this business if I weren't. But I see generally our whole profession moving in a more evidence-based toward more evidence-based practice. I'm hopeful. I see some shifts in higher education, which is absolutely necessary for our future. Yeah. So I was born hopeful. I am hopeful, but I really think there are some concrete things that, including the research that's coming, the good work that communities around dyslexia is doing, and they are doing, and that all of that is happening within this larger framework in the education world of attention to evidence-based practices gives me a whole lot of hope. There are conversations happening in early grades that I've never seen happening before. And it's not about getting kids labeled as dyslexic. It's about doing the very best job we can with the resources we can to help every child become a reader and writer. And we know that that's possible. Oh, it's possible.
It's possible. All of them. It's possible. Thank you. That was beautiful. I love that. And I agree. I'm seeing schools begin in the last years, and maybe it's because I'm doing it now full time. This is what I do now full time. But I am seeing schools embrace the phrase evidence-based practices, evidence-based instructional practices. That's what I talk about all the time. But I am seeing that, and I am seeing them open to, okay, then tell us what works so that we can go into our rooms and do it. And I feel that there's a shift, like the tide is turning in that area, and that personally brings me a ton of hope as well.
Yes.
So you have talked about different pieces of advice, and the book's filled with it. But if you could, in our last few minutes, leave teachers, school leaders and parents, just with one piece of advice from Conquering Dyslexia, what would it be? My advice would be read it. But what would your what would your advice be for those people?
Uh, do my advice would be to try to stay hopeful around this. When you're, as a parent, when you're in the middle of it and you see, despite your child's hard work and the efforts of the school, that things are still much more challenging than they should be, it can be really difficult to be hopeful. So um, uh, that community that we've been talking about, because it is challenging. I mean, there's no, yeah, okay, it's just dyslexia and everything's going to be okay. It is a challenge. It's a challenge for the child and for their whole family, and so acknowledging that, but acknowledging that it can be addressed. Instruction is the way out, and doing everything we can to help that child continue to recognize their own gifts and strengths and build on that, and that this has nothing to do with being stupid or lazy or not trying hard enough. It's just a challenge, and it just happens to be in the thing that we hold in such high regard in school and in the world, reading and writing. The challenges I have, which my daughter and I have talked about this for a very long time, forever. It doesn't matter the fact that I do not know how to put two things together. You give me two things and say, how do these fit together, like quilt pieces or anything. It's just bizarre, but it's so bad with me that I do think it's a disability. And she labeled it a long time ago that I have dyspudia together. She said that's mine. And with that disability, dyspudia together, who cares? I just take these two things and I hand it to somebody and they put it together and roll their eyes and hand it back to me. It's not like difficulty with reading and writing and spelling, which are just such, it's unfair. It's a bigger challenge, but there is hope. There's lots of answers out there. There's lots of parents who are going to be very willing to talk to you about their story and connect you with resources. You're not alone, and these kids can be highly successful.
So, Jen, this is actually, I think I shared this with you. If I didn't, though, I apologize. I think I did. But this is the beginning of a series that we're going to do on dyslexia. So we are going to have parents of students that they found out that their child did have dyslexia, but they conquered it. In the name of your book, they conquered it. That's why we
Yeah.
wanted to start with Conquering Dyslexia and to
Wonderful.
send that message to all schools and also all of those readers, all of those children, because they've said to me the word, they felt something in them was broken. They felt like something needed to be fixed, that
Yeah.
they were what was wrong. And so,
Yeah.
but we will also talk to teachers that have
Mhm.
really learned the power of the systematically designed lessons that are
Mhm.
explicitly delivered, the power of explicit instruction and the power that can have, and the repetitions. And then listeners, oh my goodness, Diane Lyon, Reed Lyon's wife,
Oh, wow.
Diane, is going to come. I've gotten to know her, and I knew a lot about her work, did not know her personal journey with dyslexia. And you better grab your boxes of Kleenex, I tell you what.
Yeah.
But it's a powerful story, and then the work that she's done after it. So it is going to be, we hope that this will be the foundation of hope, that dyslexia can be conquered, and then we'll go from there. So, but Gretchen, I'm sorry I'm talking too much. I'll turn it over to you to wrap us up here next. But I do want to say to teachers, because I hear from you on a daily basis through text messages and through instant messenger on Facebook and everything, and through your emails, what can you do? Teach explicitly. Plan explicit lessons. It is the gift that just keeps on giving. in our classrooms, and every child can. You heard that today. And so it is possible. All right, Gretchen. Thank you, Jane. I learned something from you. I tell you this every time, but I love to hear you talk because I have a new takeaway just every single time. So thank you for all that you do for all of us in the world of education. All right, Gretchen.
All right, everyone. So we have talked today about conquering dyslexia. And when we conquer something, that means we become familiar with it. We understand it so that then we can tackle it. We can overcome. That is what it means to conquer. It means to overcome something. So after listening to this podcast today, I feel that you have a moral responsibility and a moral obligation to share this information. And this is a responsibility and an obligation that weighs on me heavily. And that's why if you've ever had a conversation with me, I do talk about and I do advocate for dyslexia a lot, because if we don't understand something, we cannot conquer it. And so we have to do this one step at a time. And it takes all of us. It takes educators, it takes researchers, it takes parents to move this forward, to see the change happen and to feel the progress that is being made. And so often when we hear stories of dyslexia, the hope comes at the end. But at the beginning of their stories, they're often just filled with this sense of hopelessness and this sense of dread. And we need to eliminate that. We want it to become your child has dyslexia. And then for the parents to feel the sense of, okay, well, we know how to handle this. This is okay. Yes, we know how to move forward. We know what's best. And boom, it's not even.
Let's go.
We feel confident.
Let's go.
That is where we want to be. We are not there yet, but I hope that we can get there in time. So, Dr. Hasbrouck, thank you so much for spending time with us again. As Mom mentioned earlier, every conversation with you leaves us feeling more informed, more inspired, and most importantly, more hopeful. I hold on to the hope that I receive from you, and just listening to the two of you talk today about what you're seeing in schools nationwide. That is very important, because I feel like when we are teachers in one classroom in one school, we can easily lose that hope. So it's nice to know that change is being made and that things are happening. We know that our listeners are going to walk away from this today with practical ideas and renewed confidence that every child can become a successful reader when they're given the right instruction and support. So, to everyone listening, if you haven't picked up Conquering Dyslexia yet, please do. We highly encourage it. It's a tremendous resource for educators, school leaders, and families alike. So once again, thank you for joining us for another episode of Grit and Grace, a literacy journey. Until next time, keep leading with grit, teaching with grace, and never stop believing in what's possible for every child.
And as always, Grit and Grace has been brought to you by Angela Hanlin and Associates. We encourage you to please talk about this in your schools, talk about it in the teachers' lounges, and then share this with other teachers and parents and families. Thank you.
Grit and grace, that's how we grow. Step by step and child by child we know. There's power in the words we say. We lift the voices, light the way. Grit and grace, it's a journey we all share. For every child,